Ben Hogan spent his life studying the golf swing, not admiring it, studying it. He rebuilt his own motion after years of fighting a hook. He examined grips, planes, pivots, impact positions, and every tiny movement that separated a good strike from a perfect one. To generations of golfers, Hogan became one of the ultimate authorities on how a golf club should move. So when he was asked about the greatest swing he had ever seen, his answer carried unusual weight. It wasn't Sam Snead, it wasn't Byron Nelson, it wasn't Jack Nicklaus. Hogan's answer was Mickey Wright. Greatest golf swing I ever saw. And Hogan wasn't alone. When Byron Nelson was asked essentially the same question, his answer was just as simple. Two of the finest ball strikers in history looked at this woman from San Diego and saw something close to mechanical perfection. And the numbers seem almost impossible now. 82 LPGA victories, 13 major championships, a career Grand Slam completed at just 27 years old, 13 victories in a single season. Yet perhaps the strangest number attached to Mickey Wright's career is this one, 34. Because at only 34 years old, while still capable of winning tournaments, Mickey Wright effectively walked away from full-time professional golf. The woman who may have possessed the finest swing the game had ever seen reached a point where she no longer wanted the life that came with possessing it. And to understand why, you first have to understand just how extraordinary that swing really was. Mickey Wright did not grow up inside a modern golf academy. There were no launch monitors, no force plates, no high-speed cameras. Her education began largely by watching. Wright grew up around San Diego and became fascinated with golf as a child. At La Jolla Country Club, she had the enormous good fortune of watching another young San Diego golfer hit balls almost every day. His name was Gene Littler. Littler's effortless rhythm would eventually earn him the nickname Gene the Machine. Wright watched him closely. She picked up practice balls. She studied the motion. Then she tried to reproduce what she had seen. Years later, Wright would describe herself simply as a golf addict. Her family took that obsession seriously. For a period of roughly 2 years, Wright's mother drove her about 125 miles each way to San Gabriel Country Club for lessons with renowned instructor Harry Pressler. Hundreds of miles of driving for lessons that could sometimes last only half an hour. There was no guarantee any of this would produce a champion, but slowly, something unusual was being built. Not through brute strength, through efficiency. At first glance, Mickey Wright's swing looks almost too graceful to produce the kind of power she generated. That is part of the illusion. She was tall and athletic, with a wide arc, high hands, and pronounced knee action. Her takeaway moved the club head long, low, and wide, rather than snatching it quickly upward with the hands. Wright even demonstrated a drill where she placed a tee roughly 12 inches behind the ball and tried to knock it away during the takeaway. The purpose was simple: create width, create arc, create time for speed to build naturally. But the more interesting movement happened during transition. Wright described using the final 2 fingers of her left hand to pull on the club as she started down. That action helped create a slight bow in the lead wrist, a position modern instructors discuss constantly today. She was already doing it in the 1950s. Instead of sliding excessively toward the target, Wright rotated. The lower body moved, the torso followed. The club arrived with tremendous speed, but the motion never looked rushed. And then there was the strike. Players who watched her described an unusual contrast. Swing looked graceful. Impact did not. Impact was explosive. That combination gave Wright one of the great weapons of her era: long irons. And you have to remember the equipment she was using: heavy shafts, small club heads, golf balls far less forgiving than anything sold today. Yet Wright could launch long irons high into the air and stop them on greens. Shots that were difficult for almost everyone else became part of her normal vocabulary. A beautiful golf swing can become mythology. Numbers are harder to romanticize, and Mickey Wright left behind one round that almost functions like a laboratory experiment. It happened at the Tall City Open in Midland, Texas in 1964. The course was Hogan Park, par 71, a little over 6,200 yards. Before the women's tournament, some of the best male amateurs in Texas had played from the same tees. The best score among them was 69. The course record was 66. Mickey Wright entered the final round in 11th place, 10 shots behind. Then she eagled the first hole, birdied the second, birdied the third. At the fourth, she faced a 25-foot putt across a difficult section of green. It went in. She reached the turns 6 under par. Another birdie came at 10. A bogey followed at 11. Then she birdied 14, 15, and 17. Wright reached the 18th needing only par. She made it. 62. 9 under par. 4 shots better than the existing course record. 7 shots better than the best round produced by those male amateurs. And exactly 10 shots better than the deficit she faced when the day began. Her 62 forced a playoff with Sherry Wheeler, so Wright went back onto the course and birdied the first 2 playoff holes. Tournament over. 20 holes. 11 under par. That isn't an opinion about the beauty of a golf swing. That's evidence. And years later, another kind of evidence came from Ben Hogan. USGA broadcaster and historian Rhonda Glenn once sat down to interview him. As she prepared her tape recorders, she casually mentioned that Mickey Wright had sent Hogan her regards. His reaction was immediate. He leaned back, smiled, looked into the distance, and then gave his verdict. Greatest golf swing I ever saw. Not greatest women's swing, not one of the greatest. Greatest swing, period. There is something fitting about Hogan admiring Wright. Both were obsessed with efficiency. Both pursued control relentlessly, and both eventually developed complicated relationships with the attention their greatness created. But before that burden caught up with Wright, she produced one of the most concentrated periods of dominance professional golf has ever seen. From 1961 through 1964, Mickey Wright won 44 tournaments. 44 in 4 seasons. That averages 11 victories a year. In 1963 alone, she won 13 times. The LPGA played only 32 official money events that season. Wright won more than 40% of them. Think about that for a moment. Imagine entering an entire professional season knowing that one player might win nearly every other tournament, and 13 victories in a single LPGA season remains the record. Then she won 11 more times in 1964. She captured the VAR trophy for lowest scoring average 5 consecutive years. She led the LPGA money list 4 straight seasons. She won at least 1 tournament in 14 consecutive seasons. Women's Opens, 4 LPGA championships, 3 Women's Western Opens, 2 title holders championships, 13 majors in total. And in 1961 and 1962, Wright became the only LPGA player ever to hold all 4 of the era's major championships at the same time. By the age of 27, she had already completed the career Grand Slam. Her eventual total was 82 LPGA victories, and she accumulated them in only 336 starts, roughly 1 victory for every 4 tournaments she entered. Those numbers explain dominance, but they don't quite explain what watching Mickey Wright apparently felt like. Women's Open at Baltusrol. The championship concluded with a brutal 36-hole final day. Wright shot 69 in the morning, then 72 in the afternoon. She won by 6. Legendary golf writer Herbert Warren Wind struggled to find a comparison. Open. Then there was Dallas in 1960. With a ferocious Texas wind helping, Wright drove the green on a 385-yard hole. 385 yards in 1960. This was a player who normally averaged around 225 yards from the tee and could stretch drives toward 270. Wright understood why some men disliked being outdriven by her, but she believed they misunderstood what they were competing against. It wasn't raw strength, it was efficiency, and perhaps the most revealing detail came from her equipment. Wright acquired a set of Wilson Staff clubs in 1963. She kept using them for decades. Those clubs stayed with her through most of the rest of her competitive life, even into senior events in the 1990s. Golf equipment changed, courses changed, the professional game changed. Mickey Wright trusted the motion. That trust should have created a long and comfortable reign. Instead, being Mickey Wright was becoming exhausting. Women's professional golf in the early 1960s was nothing like the global LPGA machine of today. The tour was still fighting for sponsors, for galleries, for attention, and Mickey Wright had become one of its greatest attractions. That created an unusual problem. Tournament sponsors didn't merely want Wright to play, some felt they needed her. Kathy Whitworth later remembered just how intense the pressure became. Sponsors could threaten to cancel tournaments if Wright wasn't in the field, and Wright knew what cancellation meant. She wouldn't be the only one losing an event. Every other woman on tour would lose one too. So she played 33 tournaments in 1962, 30 in 1963, 27 in 1964. Meanwhile, she was also serving as LPGA president. There were interviews, press obligations, promotional appearances, cocktail parties, Rotary Club events, more travel, more expectations, more people needing another piece of Mickey Wright. And underneath all of it was her own perfectionism. Wright later described the cumulative toll in a phrase that sounds almost like something an aging prizefighter would say. It wasn't the years. She developed anxiety, an ulcer, her feet caused serious trouble. Her ankles were injured. She disliked flying. She also dealt with an adverse reaction to sunlight. The machine that looked so effortless on the golf course was paying for that effort everywhere else. By 1969, Wright was 34 years old. Her leg ended up in a cast after another ankle injury, and she stepped away from full-time professional golf. Not because the swing had failed, because the life surrounding the swing had become too expensive. The great irony is that Wright may not have fully appreciated how far beyond ordinary greatness her peers believed she had gone. Betsy Rawls said Wright established a standard of shot making that might never be matched. Byron Nelson chose her swing above every other swing he had witnessed. Ben Hogan did the same, and Kathy Whitworth, the woman who eventually surpassed Wright with 88 LPGA victories, went even further. Whitworth believed Wright could have won more than 100 tournaments had she continued playing a full schedule. Think about that. The all-time LPGA victory leader looked at the woman directly behind her in the record book and essentially believed the record should have belonged to Mickey. And yet Wright never staged some dramatic comeback. That wouldn't have suited her. She simply appeared from time to time. In 1973, 4 years after stepping away from the full-time tour, she entered the Colgate Dinah Shore Winners' Circle. Her feet were still bothering her badly enough that she played in tennis shoes. She was 38 years old. She won anyway. Victory number 82. Then, in 1979, at 44, Wright nearly did it again. She reached a playoff. Her opponent was Nancy Lopez, the defining young superstar of a new generation, one era standing across from the next, the woman who had helped carry the LPGA through the 1950s and 60s, facing the player who would help transform it in the television age. Wright lost that playoff. But by then, the point had already been made. The swing was still there. The skill was still there. What had changed was her desire to live inside the spotlight. She withdrew again. She wanted privacy. And eventually, golf learned to respect that. Recognition arrived anyway. The Associated Press named Mickey Wright the female golfer of the 20th century. In 2010, the USGA presented her with the Bob Jones Award. Then, in 2012, the USGA Museum created an exhibition room dedicated to her. She was the first woman given that distinction. The other golfers honored with rooms at the time were Bob Jones, Arnold Palmer, and Ben Hogan. The circle was complete. But perhaps the best ending isn't found in a museum. It's found at Wright's home. Long after the galleries disappeared, long after the sponsors stopped calling, long after she had anything left to prove, Mickey Wright kept a practice mat. She would stand there and hit balls simply because she still loved the sensation of striking one properly. People who saw her later in life said the motion was still recognizable. Less speed, same rhythm, same balance, same unmistakable shape. Ben Hogan spent a lifetime searching for answers inside the golf swing, and when he saw Mickey Wright's, he believed the search had essentially ended. That alone would have made her worth remembering. But Wright's story is larger than technique. She won 82 times despite walking away when most champions would have been entering the second half of their careers. She dominated a tour that also depended on her presence to survive. She reached the summit and discovered that she preferred the game to the fame attached to it. Maybe that's why her swing still feels so appropriate. Nothing unnecessary, nothing performed for attention. Power without visible strain. Complexity reduced to something that looked simple. Mickey Wright eventually left the stage. She never really left golf, and more than half a century after her prime, instructors still freeze those old black and white frames. Players still study the positions, and the verdict of Hogan and Nelson still hangs over every swing that came after hers, the greatest swing they ever saw.